MBA projects are really a crucial part of the MBA program, and for many reasons. Now, every managerial education that has to be relevant, of course, must bring together best theoretical concepts with application, with practice. And an MBA project is an experience-based learning and personal development tool, which brings value for participants. They can practice what they have learned through the program. They test themselves in very demanding situations. It brings value for us, the school, because we stay in touch with the corporate world. We see what are the important issues, but we also can assess the quality of the MBA participants. And of course, it brings value for our corporate partners because we solve challenging situations for them, strategic issues which they face. So it's a win-win-win thing. And as said, is something that brings together, that has this holistic component in it. It addresses a major challenging situation and brings together the practical side, the application, and good analysis, good conceptual thinking. Well, we have MBA projects since the very beginning of the program, and by now we have made more than 200, actually 211 team projects. We allow for either team or individual project setting, but majority of them are team projects. And it's not very difficult to find, actually, candidates, companies that are willing to work with us. Every year we need 5, 6 of them. Typically, they would be companies where our MBA alumni work, where they are at senior positions, that come to us with challenging situations, with interesting ideas of what they would work on. And since they already have experience of what it means to be part of the MBA project team, what the company can expect from the project, they are good at estimating the value potential, and they manage the expectations well. So for us, of course, it's always interesting to find the diversity of projects. So every year we select not only industrial companies, but also service companies, companies from different countries in the neighborhood. We have worked from Russia and Ukraine to, of course, Slovenia in many settings, many industries. More than 40 different industries have been covered by now. And every year it's great fun. MBA projects are quite challenging, and for participants, they are typically a new experience. Very few of them have worked on such strategic projects in the past. Some have. But it's also often bringing a completely different component because most of them work for an industry, for a company they are not familiar with. So they really have to start from the scratch. MBA projects are also the only major obligation in the MBA program which requires some time being spent not during the module, not only during the module, but also in the periods in between the modules. They are something that we devote roughly about 30 days in the modules, but as said, some other time is necessary also. Good teamwork is mandatory. When we set up the project teams, and by the way, once we set them, they remain fixed until the end of the project, so people don't fluctuate it from one team to another. When we set the teams, it's kind of a mix between art and science. We look at personality profiles, we look at people's experience, that they come with different competencies, that we have people from the marketing and finance and technology side in the same project, that of course we don't have anybody where a conflict of interest would exist, so nobody from the competition. Actually, I have to correct myself. We once had a project for a bank where the bank explicitly asked us to put somebody from a competition bank into the project team. I found it really extraordinary. But as said, this is a fairly special case. So normally we try to manage a diversity, a very diverse team that brings more value. Try to manage it in such a way that we can predict team dynamics a bit. We prefer to have good team dynamics and That doesn't mean that everybody who is on the team have to be friends with each other, but that means that once we form this group, we support it and we keep it for the period of roughly about 10 months, because they start working in late February, early March together, and then they complete the project in December. Now, every team follows basically the same structure of work, the same organization, the same logic. Regardless whether the team comprises somebody from the company who has commissioned the project or not, sometimes it does, sometimes more often it does not. The first phase is always spent on getting to understand the industry from which the company comes. Understand it well enough to be able to partner with the company in the conversation, to prove that we can be good partners for solving these strategic issues. Also, to get enough insights to understand the context in which the problem has to be solved, to understand the way external forces influence the situation, and also understand what kind of optics we have to apply in the next phases. Because only when we understand which business models work in a particular situation, only when we understand which are the key success factors for a company in a particular market segment, we can later look whether our client is doing things the way they should be done. So the first phase, always context industry analysis. And then the second phase, we look more in details into the company itself. We look at the situation, what are the complications there. We try to understand what are the strengths and weaknesses of the company, what are the possible choices, and start building the model of prioritizing. Where are the issues, which are the issues, and which come as more important than the others, and put them into the framework of solving the strategic question the company, the client asked us to solve. The last stage, the third stage, is always the implementation focus. Now, if the client has confirmed that our approach is okay after the second presentation, now the client agrees with the selected priorities and the general approach to the solution, the model of the solution, then we have to flesh out to detail the solution, not only how it should look like, but also how should we come from where we are at the moment to where we want to be. How to implement concretely, what actions, what resources, what risks. And this is then making it very tangible for the company, for the client. Now, it of course would not work would we leave the teams to themselves and expect that they will find the solutions completely by themselves unsupported. So the school gives support in two forms. Let me first deal with the one which is more obvious, which is the content support. Every team gets, we call them mentors. We don't call them supervisors. I think supervising has a kind of connotation which we prefer to avoid. Mentors are there as partners in discussion. Mentors, of course, help the team to understand whether they have addressed or not the situation properly, whether they are structuring the problem in the right way. When they find themselves in doubt where to look for a conceptual framework, mentors may suggest some literature or some sources. But more or less, one thing always remains a principle. Mentor will provide support to the team, will act as a act as a partner in discussion. But the ownership of the project is still with the team. And mentor will not solve the problems for the team instead of the team. So we are active support. Now, mind you, challenges that teams face are diverse. So our mentors have to have wide business acumen. They have to have the strategic advisory skills. They have been consultants in their lives. They have worked on strategic issues. They have worked on general management level, on the board level of large companies. They know how to look at the things from the holistic perspective to not miss an important dimension of the problem, but also they know how to bring them down to the level of details and check the teams on the detail level in a way to prevent teams going out with something which would prove to be inconsistent, which would prove to be of a lesser quality to the client. So at the end of the day, mentor has the right to tell the team, guys, sorry, you're not good enough. You will not go to the client with this presentation. It happens rarely, and it never happens at the end of the project. At least it never happened up to now. But occasionally it happens in the early stages of the project that the team is not driving itself to the necessary level of quality, and then the mentor has to intervene. So yes, experienced professors, colleagues, myself and colleagues working with me, Brane Kalpec and Jim Ellert at the moment, we all have years and years of strategic advisory experience, executive education experience, and real-life experience working with companies from many fields. Without cooperation from the company, it wouldn't work. Now, that being said, this is one of the prerequisites. We never force a company to go into the project. It's always a voluntary thing. Companies volunteer to join. I have to say projects are paid by the companies because we also found out early enough that what is free of charge is usually not appreciated enough. So companies pay a small fee for the project. Nevertheless, what they have to commit on one hand side is give us access to information, to data from the company. That doesn't mean that the company has to dig for us throughout. No. Company has to provide us with internal data where internal data exists and where we need it. Of course, we sign non-disclosure agreements. Everything is confidential. Nothing is shared around. Of course, that's a prerequisite, needless to say. Companies allows for interviewing. Sometimes not only within the companies, they also occasionally give us contacts with their clients, for example, their suppliers, with the project topic required. But what I want to stress is that this still is smaller in comparison to the amount of information gathering and information processing done by the team. Team looks these days on internet, but also goes directly to the market research companies or directly to the clients with the permission of the company. And does a lot of insightful data compilation, which very often brings very new insights for the company. We don't take things from the company, recycle and bring back. That's not that much value creating. And in comparison with big consultants, McKinsey's of this world, we don't put the same burden of time pressure and resource pressure on the company as they do. We are light in our approach to the companies. Now, a legitimate question, of course, are companies using what we bring to them? And first of all, let me just use a small illustration as a proof, I think, of the concept. Quite a few companies have used more than one of our projects, and I don't think they would use us for more than once would we bring anything which is not worth. But let me give you two concrete examples how they use it. Sometimes, it may be an extreme example, it is really challenging in a positive sense. We once worked for a regional company. I will not name it, I will not name the industry, but the company was interested in a new way of tracking performance, setting goals, tracking goals, KPIs, so a balanced scorecard kind of thing. And it was more than 10 years ago. The team came with very solid understanding of what matters in this industry, so what kind of things should be tracked. Came with a usual balanced approach, kind of a balanced scorecard, as I said. By the second phase, when we came back to the company telling them, look, you don't have this well fixed and you should consider going in this direction. The company said, wow, this is exactly it. And then they went implementing our suggestions even before we could develop them in more detail. So what was then left for the third phase? Well, the good thing is what we could do in the third phase was actually we did a number of workshops with the company, fine-tuning the metrics, not only what should be measured, but also where should the goals be set for the next period and so on. So while the company did the first IT support and the first round of discussion, our team helped the company team to internalize the solution and move it into daily application. So that's one example. Let me give you the other extreme. I often contact the client a couple of months after the end of the project, checking whether they have the same feelings, because they give us feedback at the very end, and usually it's very flattering. It's, wow, it was better than we expected. But then a few months later, maybe things have, they have slept over, maybe things have changed. So once I approach a client where we had a very delicate project. The topic was, should we close a certain plant or not? I approached the CEO and I said, so a few months later, so how did it go? And she said, oh, we followed your recommendation. And I said, oh, so you did close the plant because that was the recommendation of the team. And she said, well, of course not. I said, well, how did you then follow our recommendation? Because our recommendation was to close the plant. She said, yeah, well, wait a moment. There were so many details that we did not share fully with the team, and based on our experience, we understood them, and maybe team could not. What team came up with was brilliant logic, way of thinking, framework. Few pieces of data which were making difference were not available to the team. Well, we had them, we put them into the framework, we came with a conclusion not to close the plant, but we actually followed the recommendations of the team. So the project was totally useful for us. So, as you can see, in one way or another, I find almost every project gets implemented. The question about team dynamics is a critical one because, as I said earlier, without good team dynamics, it's very difficult to have a good product at the end, the good recommendation. And whether you want it or not, once a new team is put together, it follows the usual, the stages of team development, forming, storming, norming, performing, always happens. Very rarely it's beauty from the day one until the last day of the project. Very different challenges. Sometimes a strong person hijacking the dynamics. Sometimes too busy people with people trying to piggyback the others, and that only one or two are left then working for the rest. Problems, they always exist. They're usually solved by themselves. Where teams have major issues and really require support from us, we have another person, not only, sometimes it's help of the mentor is sufficient, sometimes the team coach has to be brought into the situation, and that's an experienced team coach who knows a lot about how dynamics can go the right way or the wrong way and can help the team to fix the dynamics. Now, one thing I would like to say, which I find very interesting. Team dynamics is always the matter of leadership, team leadership. And the team leadership can be, in MBA teams, project teams, can be very fluid. Somebody is nominated a leader, a coordinator, leader type. But then who is the actual leader? Sometimes this role is shared by more people or moved from one person to another, depending on how the projects develop. But what we have found out is a very interesting correlation. Teamwork, and not only teamwork, the whole thing of delivering MBA projects at a high level of quality is more than competence or technical skill, is the matter of attitudes. As businesses, business leadership is primarily the matter of attitude. And our MBA program is designed to help people develop their attitudes, not just their knowledge and their skills but also their attitudes, work on their attitudes. So what we have found out as an interesting correlation is that quality of a person's work within the MBA project tends to be a good predictor of the later career success. People who made really successful careers, on average, were also outstanding performers in our MBA projects. So we see this as an interesting thing, and we give a lot of feedback to individuals as well as the whole teams. It is about feedback that helps people to develop as a team and as individuals, which close this experiential learning. Experience without reflection, without feedback, is not worth enough. So that's what I think makes our MBA projects a really important tool for personal development. Are there success stories? Many. Let me share just 3 different and maybe extreme. Okay. One which I still recall very well, we were asked by a client headquartered in Austria, and this particular client was by far number 1 in their industry globally. B2B, huge. And they asked us to engage, and they said, we will not give you the topic from day 1. Try to understand us, see where are our strengths and weaknesses, and then jointly after phase 2, we will select the topic, and then you will suggest improvements in that particular area to us. Now, when the counterpart team, the company's executives who were supposed to be working with us, attend our presentations, listen to our suggestions, when they were presented to us, it was kind of senior, a lot of experience, some of them former McKinsey consultants, Boston Consultant Group consultants, so people with a lot of consulting, even consulting experience, not only experience from their industry. And I said, clear number 1 globally. And the team kind of asked themselves, what can we say to these people that will be new value adding? Well, by the end of the second phase, we see a very interesting pattern. This company is behaving and performing wonderfully in large markets, but they are less brilliant in small fragmented markets. We discuss that with them and they say, yeah, we understand, well, we know it actually, because we don't pay that much attention. You know, each of these small markets is a small market, doesn't deserve much attention. You know, we are after big things, we are a big company. So we said to them, okay, should you exit these small markets? By the way, this is what many companies do these days. Or you will change your business model so that you have one business model for big markets and then possibly a different business model because your big market business model doesn't seem to work in small markets. And they said, well, let's explore. Why don't you come with a proposal, this alternative business model, which would be applied to small markets? Which the team did in phase 3, presented standing ovations. It was absolutely received as something, wow, the company applied it. The opposite side, again a success, but I would say quite a stressful success. Again, an international company, this time not on the headquarter level. They asked us from the headquarters to come to one of their country subsidiaries because that particular subsidiary is not performing well and help them fix the performance. And the assumption, people are not diligent enough, maybe the rewarding system is not good enough, maybe the technical competence is not good enough, maybe historically the organizational and processes are not good enough, but they're not performing well enough. We do it by the book, we look at the context, we look internally, and what we find out is that the CEO of that subsidiary, who by the way at the same time has still some roles in the headquarters, is not doing his job really that well. Not understanding the culture well enough, not spending enough time, not building credibility with the people. And local people kind of feel like in a vacuum, don't feel supported by a local leader. So at the end, we have to come to that company and present. And to our big surprise, by the way, a guest is in the room, not just the local CEO, whom we have to say you don't do your job well enough, but the boss, the headquarter person. And the team says, well, what we have to say, we have to say it in a professional way, support it with arguments, but we have to say it. At the end of the presentation, the CEO, local CEO, gives us feedback and says, you know, I got a message from you. Thank you very much. It's a very harsh message. It's a difficult one, but I have to live with it. But I can tell you did it in a not only professional way, you were really gentle in the way you delivered your message. 1 month later, he is out of the story. He went back to the headquarters. A new person is in there with much better understanding of the local culture, moving the company in the right direction. So sometimes a success with high price in a way, but still a success. And just maybe a very recent experience, a bank comes to us, a bank which is part of a larger banking group, quite developed, quite successful, and says, we would like to learn how can we apply artificial intelligence and big data processing, big data tools in our bank to improve our digital facing with the customers. Wow, that sounds quite technical. Well, actually, it is to some degree, but primarily, as whoever knows things about digital transformation will confirm it, digital transformation is to a lesser degree about digital. It is primarily about understanding the business well, understanding the potential for new value creation through the use of these tools and so on. Not an easy project at all, but we came with a new customer segmentation and customer personas. We came with a new customer journey, and then with possible application of these advanced tools in fixing the customer journey. Needless to say, for the project team, it was a great learning experience. Often it is something that was totally out of their comfort zone, but again, highly appreciated both by the team, by the end of the learning process, and by the client.